Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Inspired Voices. Yes, I changed the name. I am going to explain that later, but I thought it was a better fit. So today we are here at Moonlight Stage Company with the famous Carrie Marshall. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Carrie, why don't you tell everyone what you do?
Well, I wear many hats, but the main one is a musician, a singer, songwriter, vocalist, and that encompasses a lot of things between performing, teaching, writing, and then I also do some acting.
Right. And also a mom.
And a mom, yeah.
That's awesome. So you won Songwriter of the Year, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And what year?
That was 2010.
Okay. And
Yeah.
how was that?
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was...
How did you get the news?
I don't remember. No, I do remember. I got by letter that I was a finalist. It was a Songwriter of the Year for North Carolina. So,
Gotcha.
and I entered the contest, and then I received via letter news that I was a finalist. And then the program. Then I came out to Carborough. I lived in Charlotte at the time, but I drove to Carborough for the actual gig, and so it was a live show for the finalists, and we all performed and then got voted on by a panel of judges there, and I think it was just judges who voted us. It wasn't audience. So found out that I won there.
That's very cool.
It's coming back to me.
Yeah, all the details are coming back. Cool. So you've been doing music obviously for a long time, ever since you could remember, right?
Yes.
So what was the first instrument that you played, or was it vocals first?
It was piano. Yeah,
Okay.
I was definitely piano first. I started lessons when I was 7 years old, and I was classically trained. And I was one of those kids. I was a very compliant kid, and so my parents were like, practice, and I did. Without a fuss. I know
Nice.
not every parent has that has it that easy, but it was one of those. Yeah, my parents literally. I had to practice an hour a day when I was 7, 8, and then by the time I was 9, 10, it was an hour and a half a day. And so I was,
work, huh?
Mozart by 8 and 9, and all that stuff.
Nice.
But it was great training ground.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I kind of did the same thing because I started off in piano as well.
Okay.
But we didn't have a piano at the house. We actually, the church that we were affiliated with let us,
Use
they gave
theirs.
us a key and
That's
we would go
awesome.
in.
Yeah.
And so my dad, you have to practice. So
Yep.
he really enforced it.
Yep. My own son just the other day was like, Mom, it's your fault that I'm not a good musician. He's like, you didn't make me practice. And so I told him, I said, well, we can start now. It's never too late. And so I'm like, give me your phone. Go practice. And he's like, no. And I was like,
No, I'm good.
How it changes. But it is true. Like I heard David Foster, who's a wonderful composer and music producer. And he was interviewed once, and I never forgot this. He talked about, if you work hard when you're young, you get to play later. But if you play when you're young, you have to work harder as an adult. And it's really true.
That's true.
So,
it never really clicked for me until a few years ago that what that really meant.
yes.
So yeah, definitely understand that.
And even when I'm teaching my own students, it's like with piano and even voice instruction, understanding your instrument as a vocalist, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. So it's like learning to speak another language. And at first it's, you're learning, and even to read another language. So you're learning your alphabet, you're learning how it sounds, and you're stumbling over words. You're trying to read, you're trying to speak, and it feels clumsy and awkward. But if you keep at it, and you continue, you become fluent. And once you're fluent, you're golden, and you can communicate however you want to.
Yeah.
So
and it's just some people just saying once they fail at it, they just don't do it again.
Yeah.
Thinking that they can never do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I completely understand
Yeah,
that.
and being willing to stumble and be willing to not be good at it at first, and
you got to own your weaknesses,
Yes.
pretty much.
Yes,
Yeah.
and not be afraid of them, and realize that being weak is not a weakness. It's a journey, and so, like you said, to own it, to be okay with it, give yourself permission. What I say is give yourself permission to be messy. Be messy. That's okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're going to stay there, but if you don't give yourself that permission, you can't get to the next point.
Right. Especially when you're rehearsing or practicing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're not performing it for anyone, so you should be free to fail.
Yes. And then even when you get to that point where you're performing, and this is scarier, but give yourself permission to fail when you're performing, because you can't practice performing unless you perform.
Yeah.
You have to get out in front of people.
Yeah.
So when you're ready for that next step. And I also, my dad is a pastor, and so I grew up in the church. And again, that was part of my education. It was by 8 years old, I was up in front of people playing, and I thought I was going to die. I was so scared. Like, I was a shy kid. I was nervous. But it taught me to go ahead and try. And yeah, you get to those points where like your brain goes left, takes a left, and then you forget what chord comes next, and you come to a screeching halt. You hit some horrible chords,
Right.
and you still don't die. You know, I'm
Yeah.
living proof.
You might be
that I'm
sweating
okay.
a lot, but it's okay.
I haven't even ever passed out on stage, and sometimes I thought I would.
Nice. That's funny. So you grew up in a church, and do you think that's why you got into the piano first?
Yeah. Well, and again, my mother played, so
Oh,
it was natural. You know, it was easy for her to teach me.
Nice.
And then, you know, just because of my family life, it was easy. My dad was in charge of the church, so he's like, "You're playing." It was not an option, and so. So yeah, I just had a lot of experience early on
Very cool.
with practicing and then practice performing.
Yeah.
So.
Did you? I know you trained classically 1st. Was there ever a point? Because like for me, I trained classically on the piano as well, but then I got tired of playing classical music.
Oh yeah.
When was the shift for you?
Well, and it's funny that you say that. My mom found this diary entry of when I was a kid. She was going through the attic, going through all this stuff, and she found my old diaries. And I always played my own stuff. So I would practice what I had to first. And then whenever I could, I would just scrap all that and play whatever I wanted to play. And I was always, you know, again, songwriter. I think songwriter at heart. I didn't know it at the time. But when I was on my own time, I would just fiddle around. I'd come up with my own melodies. I would hear something on TV and emulate it on the piano. And I just kind of grew my skills that way without even realizing I was.
Right.
And then even like, sounds funny, but I have memories doing dishes, making up songs while I'm doing the dishes, coming up with lyrics, telling whole musical stories.
I wish I had that. I mean, because like I trained classically and then I just got lost interest. I should have jumped to something else, but
well, I think a
it
lot
just
of
didn't come to
people
me.
do. I think a lot of people feel like that's the only way you can do it. And
Right.
if you don't do it this way, then forget it.
Yeah.
And hear me, I'm not saying that classical training isn't good. It is good. It gave me a wonderful musical foundation.
Yeah.
That
It's a strong foundation.
yeah,
to the
again,
music.
like I worked hard when I was young, but it allows me to play now because I have that. I can play very easily, musically speaking, because of it. But then I was able to take that, and then again, as a writer, do my own stuff with it. So, and what I tell my students who come into me, you know, because I will, if people want to be only trained classically, I'll do that. But really, when you're looking at like the greats like Mozart and Beethoven, you know, they were the artists of their day. And so they were composing, and notated music is just the written form of the language, but the passion comes from here. It always comes from here. So how you feel the emotion, how you feel the mood, that's where the artistry comes in. And so whatever kind of style of music that you're interested in now, you take that and you feel it. You let the passion come out, and then you have the tools to help you express it.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a good way to put it too. So you play jazz, right?
Yes.
So were you always into jazz, or was that something that came later on in life?
That definitely came later on in life.
So what were you interested in before that?
So classically trained, and then singer-songwriter stuff for many, many years. And I did sing a lot in the church early on, and then was involved in Christian music for a while. But ironically, when I lived in Nashville, and I lived in Franklin, which is where Christian music kind of mecca is.
Right.
I
Yeah.
say.
Around what year?
That was 2004. I moved there.
Okay. So after college.
Yes,
and stuff.
yes,
Okay, I gotcha.
and even 3 kids.
Oh,
3
so
kids
you
in
played
tow.
Christian music for a long time then?
I did.
Pretty
I was
much-
in a band for about 10 years, and we toured all over New England and even the East Coast. We did a lot of stuff.
That's cool.
So I did that for many, many years,
Yeah.
and even writing for that group. And so I had some wonderful experiences there. I didn't, again,
Yeah.
practice performing. I didn't realize was grooming me for the next step.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So did you play piano there?
I
Did
played
you
piano
play
and
vocals?
and I was a vocalist. Yeah.
Vocalist.
Yeah.
Awesome. Like the lead singer?
I was the lead female singer, but there was a main male singer. So I did a lot of harmonies, and then when they needed a girl singer, they toss it to me.
Yeah. So what got you into vocal? Like,
Well,
vocal
that's a
training?
good question. When I was young, again, I would refuse to sing because my mother did, and I didn't want to be like my mother. That was that was the middle school phase. And
Typical.
yeah, and then I got to high school, and I joined chorus because I really did secretly want to sing, and I finally got over my own issues of being like my mom. And my mom is a soprano. And I don't know if you can tell by my speaking voice, but I'm very much an alto, like really tenor. I sing very low.
Right.
And so I used to have this conception, again, that I had to sing a certain way. And I finally realized, I can own my own voice. I can sing my way. So that was a gradual, again, even as I started writing for myself, writing songs that I enjoyed, and that I could hit the notes in.
Yeah.
And then I just started singing anywhere I could. So early on, and again, people kind of would mentor me. I had one guy tell me, sing anywhere and everywhere. So I would sing for schools. I would sing for churches. I would do assemblies. I sang at prisons. I would go.
Really?
Yeah, I would
Prisons?
go and sing for inmates.
Well, how was that?
It was awesome, to be
Yeah?
honest
Were
with
you
you.
nervous?
Captive
beforehand?
audience. Huh, get it? I know. Really bad pun. That's like my mom, too.
Well, you're a mom, so it's okay. Mom
yeah,
jokes.
Yeah. But I mean, again, you talk about getting practice performing. That was great.
Was it an all women's prison?
I did all women's and all men's. I did both.
I just want to. Wow, interesting.
I did. So my first prison experience was all men. Yeah. So going in, being the only female there.
Is it like Johnny Cash? Didn't Johnny Cash do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he went to prison. Right?
Yeah. But what was interesting, it was a very humbling experience, to be honest with you, because they were so appreciative that you would be willing to come in and sing for them. Yep. And there's guards everywhere, so they were very respectful. It wasn't getting catcalls and stuff that would make me feel uncomfortable. I felt very safe. Nice. And they were just grateful. And then I did same thing. I sang at a women's prison. Same thing. The women, and they weren't forced to come and hear me, but if they wanted something to do, they had the option to come in and hear a concert. And so I would go and do concerts.
Very cool. How old were you when you did that?
I was like 19.
Wow.
19, but between 19 and 24. And then I even sang for a prison in Nashville when I moved to Nashville. I did that.
I guess it wasn't as scary since you already did it.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's very cool. So you moved to Nashville. What was the goal there? Like, why'd you move to Nashville?
We actually moved there because my husband at the time was transferred there.
Gotcha.
So everyone thought, and then this is the thing too. Everyone was like, this is it. This is a sign. You're going to get, you're going to get the record deal.
Right. Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And I believed them. So he was transferred for his job. And at the time, my children were age 5 and I have twins, and my twins were 2. That's not the best time to go and try to go on tour as a singer. So I got there, and I had already been touring with the band for 10 years. So it was like starting over in many ways. It was hard for me at first because I just felt shelved.
Yeah.
And, but.
What certain things did you find hard about it? Like, I know there was some walls. You didn't know anyone there, right?
No, I didn't know anyone.
So you had to absolutely start from the bottom.
Yes.
So what was the first step for you then?
I just tried to avail myself of, again, what I learned early, just perform anywhere and everywhere. And I did. So I would go to these songwriter nights. And again, I was coming from a church background, and there, because the churches are glutted with musicians, a lot of churches won't let you sing your own music. And I was a songwriter, and I had been doing that and singing my own music for years. And Christian music too. So the churches wouldn't let me sing my Christian songs in church. And so I was like, well, where do I sing them then? I don't know what to do. So that's when I first started singing in bars, and I was kind of like little Miss Pollyanna, you know how we joke about that. I was just like, I didn't tell anyone. I'm like, I'm going to go sing in a bar.
The sinful place.
And then I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome.
Did you think that someone was going to be throwing like glass at, or
well, again, coming from the background I came from,
It's like stuff you see in movies, right?
Yeah. I didn't, and it wasn't like I was completely sheltered, but I was somewhat sheltered. And so, but it was a great training ground and great for me to be like, and then it changed my writing because my audience changed and I wasn't writing songs for the church anymore. I was writing songs for everybody.
Yeah.
But this is like personal growth too. You just start to realize everyone's human, and those main themes we all struggle with. Doesn't matter if you're religious or not. We struggle with the same things, and
Exactly.
so start writing about that, and so it just was a huge shift. So that really started in Franklin, Tennessee, Nashville, and I would just go out and sing at songwriter nights. I joined Nashville Songwriter Association and would took class after class. I used to go to BMI. They would have workshops once a week, once a month. And so I just educated myself again. And I wasn't...
and what's BMI?
Broadcast Music International Incorporation,
Testing
something.
you here.
So...
it's okay, I'll cut that out.
Yeah, I shouldn't... Okay, good.
No, we're not going to cut that out.
You've got ASCAP, CSAC, and BMI, so they're performing rights organizations.
Okay, gotcha.
And so for songwriters, you want to be connected. You should be connected to one.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because they collect royalties for you. And so in Nashville, they, to help educate songwriters, they would have different workshops and things. And so I just jumped in wherever I could. When my kids were in school, I would use my mommy hours and go and just educate myself and then sing where I could.
Wow,
but
that's very cool. Not a lot of people do that. They just stick to the mom thing, which is fine too. But if you want to pursue something, or if you have dreams, but you have to kind of work at it. So.
And so I think
how was that balance?
The balance of being a mom and
working at your career.
It's always a juggling act. Yeah. And again, I just like my very first album I did. Which I don't let people listen to now, but again, part of the journey. I did it while my twins were babies and my daughter was 3, and it took me a year and a half because I could only work on it once every 2 weeks. But I just chipped away, finally got it done. Then moved to Nashville, same thing, educated myself, started over again. Then you chip away. I met other people. I started doing session work, so I'd go in as a vocalist and sing on other people's albums. And it's, you start to meet people, and then they hear your voice. Hey, you'd be great on this project. Hey, let's write a song together. Then you'd write together. And then, making an album in Nashville is a little bit more expensive than making an album on your own. Yeah. And so starting to save the money, and chip away at it one song at a time.
Okay. How did people react to you? Like your skills, I guess, your talents. Like, did they say you were really good? Or?
In Nashville, I was good enough, that I would get meetings with publishers. They never actually took any of my songs. And in Nashville, too, they have different tracks. They're like, are you a songwriter or are you an artist? Because they really see it as 2 separate career paths. And it's not to say you can't be an artist and songwriter, too, but... songwriters in Nashville tend to be, you're writing songs for other people to take. And because, again, I was a mom, talking about the balance, I had one guy who was an A&R rep. He heard me. He's like, well, and I was 32 when we moved to Nashville. So that's over the hill as far as Nashville is concerned. And so they told me, like, well, you look young, so we could stick you in a miniskirt and pass you off as 26. But he's like, you probably don't want to leave your babies for months at a time. I'm like, no, I don't. Yeah. And so I'm like, that answered it for me. I'm like, all right, I'll do the songwriter track.
Was that an easy decision for you, or was that kind of just like cut and dry?
It was easy because I wasn't going to sacrifice my kids for that.
Yeah.
And easy in that sense, but hard to be surrounded by people who were all doing what I wanted to do. I mean, my neighbors, down there, because it's a small community. So I had neighbors who were, on record labels and touring all the time. You see tour buses going all the time, and I was just kind of like, oh,
where can it be me?
But again, I learned so much there, and I learned about the business of music. And
was it always hard to see other people achieve what you want to achieve?
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
Not again. And I'm such an achiever personality anyway.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
So I to fight off that feeling of I'm a loser because I don't have a record deal or whatever. And to keep believing in yourself and going, it's a journey. Take what I can from this situation, this point in my life. There are seasons to life. And to not let that define my value. And so again, singing wherever I could. I was just telling this story a little bit earlier to a mom at Moonlight before we started here. I sang at an elementary school fundraiser that my boys and my daughter went to elementary school. And I mean, we're talking Franklin, Tennessee, where like sometimes we're like, oh, Alison Krauss is off tour. We've got her singing for our lunch today. And you're like, oh, great.
Oh, wow.
And so sometimes, yay, that's awesome. But then it's also like, oh, bummer. Like, where do I sing? If you had to go and find places to get out there and not let that stop you and be like, okay, I don't have a record deal, but I can still sing. And so anyway, I sang at this event at my kid's school, and I had someone come up to me and kind of go like, they meant to be encouraging, and it so bummed me out because they were like, oh, that's so great that you're still singing and that you haven't given up.
Oh, the pity party.
It was. And I was like, and I look back now, I'm like, thank God I didn't let that stop me.
Yeah.
Because I had my best experiences like 5 years later.
Right. It's funny because like when people say stuff like that to me, I don't say anything back. I'm just like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And because what they don't understand is what I'm doing is the long run, not the short run.
Exactly.
So that's what they don't get.
And a lot of people, it's hard. You have to really love it, and you have to be willing to do it. And it's not all glitz and glamour. It's like 90% hard work, and then the 10% that people see is when you have the lights on you and you're doing the show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the cherry on top.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's like when that does happen, it's I don't know. It's a lot of people just don't think. If everyone thought in the long term, it'd be so much better. Yeah. I think everyone would be more successful if they just took everything in the long term.
And sometimes I wonder if it's an American type of philosophy.
It is. I think so. Yeah. Because in Europe, they really don't have that. They have it, but not as much as Americans because I think it's because we can make an unlimited amount of money. Yeah. I think that's why.
Yeah. And also we're so youth driven, and again, speaking as a woman too, where they told me I was over the hill at 32. And so are you saying I don't have anything to contribute artistically for the rest of my life? Like I refuse to believe that. And to be like, okay, what I took out of Nashville was, because like I said, I got to meet with publishers and the feedback I also got was, wow, you got good songs, but we love your voice. And I didn't know I was that good of a singer. I really didn't. Oh. So if anything, Nashville validated. I'm like, hey, I kind of came away going, a lot of people are saying this. Maybe I'm good. And then I left Nashville. I lived there 4.5 years. Right. And then that's how I got into jazz. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and again, started over. And I was like, I don't want to lose the momentum I was gaining in Nashville. So I started singing wherever I could for free.
Free is the key.
Yeah.
Especially when you're starting off. Yeah. You have to do it for free.
You do. And
it's not about the money right there. You have to gain the value. You have to give value first.
And when you're out there and you're seen, that's when you meet people. And I met other songwriters who are like, hey, and then they connect you to this. Yeah. And then I met other musicians, and I met a wonderful, wonderful guitarist named Van Sachs, who I will adore for my entire life because he's the best guitar player I think I've ever known, and a humble man, a hardworking man. And he was just like, he's like, I want to work with you, and he invited me on to like jazz gigs, and I used to think that jazz musically was too difficult for me, and so I never really explored it, and I had never trained in it. But then vocally, it was very easy for me to sing. And as I started working with, I plugged in with one jazz gig, and then I met other jazz players, and I started, you just
it's like a domino effect, right?
It really is. And so then that songwriter thingy that I won.
The songwriter thingy.
Yeah. What I learned from that was, I entered going, okay, I want to meet people. And I knew from the business training I got by getting shelved in Nashville for 4 years, I was like, if I get even to semifinalist or finalist, I can just use that to help with marketing.
Right.
And so I can tell people I'm a semifinalist and blah, blah, blah. So that maybe a venue might look at me where they wouldn't look at me otherwise.
Yeah.
Well, at that point I decided, well, let me try to write a song. I've been singing these jazz gigs. I should try to write a jazz song. And I wrote it. It was called Queen City. And Queen City is not a nickname for Charlotte, but I can't think of the word. So nickname.
Yeah, pretty much is.
Yeah,
a nickname
yeah.
for
And
Charlotte,
so
right?
and so I was very intentional in writing that song, and I made it personal, but I also made it intentional because I loved moving to North Carolina.
Right.
I found that Charlotte was very welcoming for new business, and I was meeting some wonderful people there. And then I took my storytelling skills,
Right.
and I just kind of made up a story about a girl moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, how she finds true love in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I also did it intentionally going, this will help market me in Charlotte.
Yeah.
If I have a song.
So you thought about
the
that
city.
before
I
you
did.
made the song? Nice.
I did.
Nice.
And just again, practically speaking, how do I help? I'm brand new to this city. Why would anybody want to listen to me?
Yeah.
There's a lot of other players here. Well, maybe I'll write a song that I can help my city that I really love. I can help market Charlotte and I can help market me.
Yeah, it's a win-win situation.
And sure enough, I won the entire competition for North Carolina with that song.
Nice. Wow.
And it worked. And it marketed me. And so then I took that, because people think, oh, you just get discovered. You have to do the work. I took that song and I'm like, okay, now I can say I won first place. And so I just called newspapers, I called magazines, I called television stations, and I got publicity on all of them. So I got on, and then because I did that, I got a gig. From that gig, there was a booking agent there. I got a booking agent from that.
Nice.
And then the booking agent, got me all sorts of wonderful gigs all around Charlotte. And so again, it just snowballs, but that's the business side of things that people don't necessarily understand when you first enter the arts. You just think, oh, I'm going to be discovered. Someone's going to be like, you are what we've been looking for. Bling, let me make you a millionaire.
Yeah. If only it were that simple.
Yeah. And then, then I started doing gigs out here in Raleigh. And I've always loved working out here. And then, again, doing
Well, let's
acting.
backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
So you went to Charlotte. How many albums do you have? When you lived in Charlotte, how many albums?
I was just finishing up the one that I started in Nashville.
Okay.
So I was finishing that up. And then again, it was still an album that was really marketed toward Christian audience. And that's a whole other long story. I thought I had a manager there, and that kind of fell through. And so I had some cool gigs, like even in Nashville, where it looked like I was going to get to open up for some great people. And then that fell through. And that's the music business, people, and the acting business, It's not done till it's done. And so then even getting into jazz, as I was starting, it was a departure. And I was like, all those doors were shutting for me, but these jazz doors were opening. And
why do you think that is, though?
What do I think?
Why do you think it was shutting for you?
I honestly, personally, I think God was going, this is the way you should go. And
it's kind of just pushing you where you needed to go. Yeah,
because I kept trying to force my way into this something else, and it was just not working.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I was getting all these other opportunities, and I was like, hello,
Yeah, that's funny that you say that, because I was talking about that on a couple of episodes for my podcast, saying that, when I changed my life, certain things, my gut would tell me to go here, but I wouldn't listen to it.
Yeah.
And then it would do it again and do it again and just do it more
sometimes
often.
we're stubborn. Sometimes you finally need to be whacked by 2x4 and you're like, oh.
Yeah, it's like, okay, after the third time, all right, I'll listen to it.
Yeah. And so it honestly, it was like that for me. And everything, and again, I was supposed to kind of tour with this new album, and it was just like bam, 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 bam. Like all of a sudden, all those opportunities just slammed shut. And I was kind of like, now what do I do?
Is that one of the reasons why you wanted that you moved to Charlotte, or was that because of job?
So that was again a job transfer.
Yeah. But it kind of worked out, right?
It did. Yeah. It did. And then again started, and then practically speaking, practically and musically and personally.
Mm-hmm.
When I looked at jazz, I was like, this is exciting for me musically. I was ready to start learning those harmonies. It really intrigued me, the music theory behind jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And I was meeting wonderful musicians there who really just helped me so much.
Was it an easy transition between
easy in what
Christian
way?
music and jazz, like learning jazz?
I just went into teaching mode, training mode, and I got a Christmas jazz book, and I taught myself how to play. And when I first saw these jazz charts, it was pretty bad. I sounded terrible. I let myself be messy, and I didn't play in front of anybody.
Good.
It sounded horrendous.
You know what I mean.
That's what you mean. So I would try to read it, and I'd be like, what is that? Like, like all these sharps and augmented 13, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I had to stop and be like, it was.
Yeah. It's like you're starting over.
Yes. Learning to read a new aspect of the language.
Right.
But I picked Christmas music because I already knew it really well. And then I started.
That's a good technique, though.
Yeah. And then I started working with these guys. And again, singing, I could do it easily. And I think that's because of my piano training, because I just already have a really good innate sense of rhythm.
Yeah. And you know the notes.
Yeah, and improvising was very easy for me. So, and I've got a good ear, so I didn't even have to know what chord they were on. I could hear it in my head and I could sing it.
Nice.
And then I just started teaching myself how to play it. And then as an artist, it was that natural transition because those doors were opening.
Yeah.
And then when I won, that was what was funny too. I'm like, oh my gosh, I won for a jazz song. I'm like, this is the only jazz song I've written.
That's funny though. That's crazy how that works.
Yes.
Very cool.
But then again, it just kind of gives you that little stamp of encouragement.
Yeah.
And like, okay, I did this. I'm going to try the next thing. And the worst thing that can happen is I fail miserably and I faint on stage and life will go on.
What seems to be a trend here is that you do things that are practical.
Yeah, I guess so.
So when you chose that song, I think you went the practical route.
I did.
What's the simplest? Keep it simple.
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think.
Yeah, and then again, I studied all the jazz greats. Like Ella Fitzgerald is a hero. I love that woman. She's amazing, and Nina Simone and all these artists that before I had never really looked into.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like this whole new musical world. And then when I started putting together my jazz album in Charlotte,
Right.
That's why I called it home, because I felt like North Carolina was home and jazz musically was home. But then there was still enough songwriter in me. I didn't want to just sing other people's songs.
Right.
And again, that's where I'm at now. It's take what I learned from those people and then make it my own with my own music. And so and then it just took off. And,
That's awesome.
And then I just started gigging a lot all around North Carolina.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then you moved to Raleigh?
Moved to Raleigh 2 years ago.
Right.
And that all just fell into place. When I first came out here and I got my talent agent out here for acting. Mm-hmm. So when I first moved to Raleigh, I was like, this is a cool city. I'm like, I could have lived here. I'm like, I feel at home here. And then as I started doing more gigs, and again, I really kind of got established in the Charlotte area, but then I started doing more all around North Carolina, and I would get some music festivals out here in the area, and I just loved. There feels like a real organic, artistic vibe here, and a real love for the arts.
Yeah.
Where I was doing a lot of cover tunes in Charlotte, and
it was more business
Yes,
related.
yeah, a lot of corporate gigs.
Yeah.
I did some festivals, but mostly corporate gigs. And there was I wanted to nurture that artist side again. So as I was getting more music festivals, I was like, I love it here. And people would come and they'd set up their folding chairs to come listen. I'm like, they don't even know me. And they're like coming to listen. Like, that's amazing.
We just want to hear some music, man.
And it's funny because I've lived all over the country, and every city has its own vibe, its own feel to it. And even Charlotte and Raleigh being 2.5 hours away from each other, they each have their own unique feel.
That's true.
And I love both cities, be all politically correct here. But it's true. I do. I love, and Charlotte was wonderful to me. I was very drawn to growing that artistic side and being able to do more music festivals. And then Moonlight Stage Company started, and I knew immediately, having known Estes and knowing what he brought artistically, and
Estes Harvey is the founder of
yes, a founder of
Moonlight.
Moonlight, and so I knew that. And I had collaborated with him already on a couple things. Like we met on a commercial set, and then he did a music video for me. And so I knew his work ethic, and I knew when he started Moonlight, I'm like, this is a place I want to be involved in, and I want my kids to be involved in.
Right.
As a mom, I'm like, I want my children to be able to learn at a place like this. So the first year, he asked me to teach, and I commuted from Charlotte, and I was like, I don't know how it's, you just throw stuff out there. I think a big thing is we want to know beforehand how life's going to turn out. We want to start here and go, oh, I'm going to get to this point, and it's just going to go linear. And it's not like that, especially in the arts. It's like all over and back and forward. But you just throw things out there and you try stuff. So I knew, okay.
You kind of just have to say yes.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah. That's a great way to say it. And so I'm like, I can just say yes to this. And I can commit to once a week. And as an actor, too, you just get used to like driving all over the place for auditions. So people are like, are you crazy? You're driving 2.5 hours to go teach? And I'm like...
Teach for an hour and then go back?
Yeah, wow. I'm like, yeah, I am. Because I'm investing in something that I know is going to be good.
Yeah,
and I don't know...
term.
For the long term. And I didn't know at that point how it would work out. I had no idea. But I just knew at this point, this is what I can do. And so I'm going to do it. And then again, Moonlight grew, and
it grew, and then you're just taking off, and you just full.
Yeah,
your schedule's pretty full, isn't it?
It's full. Yeah. It's crazy.
So you mentioned acting. How did you get into acting? What's up with that?
I got into acting in Nashville, and I did it as a musician to get training in front of the camera. Again, when I was, quote unquote, shelved, and I wasn't able to perform as much as I wanted to while my kids were in school. I was like, if I ever get a gig where I'm going to be filmed on camera, I didn't want to be like during the headlights, like, oh my gosh.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah. And I am very naturally shy, but I think music training early on showed me that even though you might be a quieter person or not the type of person who wants to draw attention to yourself, doesn't mean that acting and the arts are not for you. And so having that background as a kid, I knew, all right, take this time to train myself, not ever thinking I want to be a star, but just
to get more comfortable.
In front of a camera. And so I got signed, and I walked into the agency not knowing what to expect, not knowing if they'd be like, ha ha ha, why are you here? And honestly, I didn't even want to be
funny if they'd
actually. I know.
Ha ha ha, why are you here?
But walking into it, and again, and I'm coming from, kind of the sheltered background where, I'm embarrassed even to say this, but I even kind of felt like it was sinful. I felt like I was doing something wrong, because...
You mean getting signed by an agent?
Yeah, well, I love, I love my family, so don't hear me wrong here, but, I was brought up by my dad, who's also a Marine. So he was a minister, and he was a Marine chaplain. And so he was like, yeah. And so it was always be tough, be strong, don't wear makeup until you're like 18. Don't do that. I grew up in a strict, very traditional environment. And it was kind of like, don't get all caught up in beauty and this and that. And so I felt like by even walking into a modeling agency, I was acquiescing, and I was going, I'm going to go make money on my looks.
Now, is that something that you started thinking about when you started acting, or what did it come when you started doing jazz?
What happened for me with the acting, so in Nashville, I went to this agency and I didn't tell anyone. I just went in and did it because I wanted training on the camera. And practically speaking, people told me I was photogenic. And I was like, I need money for a CD. So if someone will pay me good money to take my picture, okay, I'll do that so that I can save for my CD. And that's why I went into the agency. And again, as a mom, trying to balance, I'm like, okay, I don't want to have to take a full-time job. And at the time I was married, I'm not anymore. But at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom. But I wanted to, so I had the ability to not have to work full time, but I still wanted to grow, and I wanted to be able to be with my children as much as I could. So getting a modeling job, you might be gone for a day, but I didn't have to commit to 9 to 5 hours.
Right.
And so I would be able to go make a good chunk of change in a day,
Right.
save that for my CD. And so I never wanted to be an actor, to be honest with you. I just was like, just take my picture. I don't want to say anything. Just take my picture and give me the money. You know? That sounds very vain. But
You're such a Christian. I'm just kidding.
she's not a Christian. She's like, no. But it was really, now looking back, it was just overcoming my own preconceived ideas and my own fears. And so once I got in there, I was like, these are awesome people. And you find this whole creative artistic community on set.
Right.
And instantly I was like, I love it. I love it. And I got the bug. And, you know, my first job, I haven't showed you a picture. It's hilarious, actually. I got a modeling job for Triton boats. And there was one girl, she was all cute in her bikini. And then but they had to have one person, because it's the law in Tennessee, you have to have a lifeboat on or a life vest.
You have to
So there was this one really beautiful girl and me in the life vest.
Aww. You're the special friend.
Looking like the nerd, which honestly worked for me anyway. So
that's funny. Hey, you got paid, right?
And I got paid. But then from there, I started booking a lot of commercials, and I never thought I'd be doing television. And I did some live modeling shows. I did some runway shows, and then live TV modeling stuff. And then, and again, free at first. I paid my dues kind of stuff, built it up, got the paid jobs. And then I started booking commercials. And I did have a little bit of acting background in high school. I did musicals, but that was it. And then when I moved to North Carolina and I signed with Talent One, Anne Green, my booking agent there, she was like, you know, you need to get some indie film under your belt. And because I had never done any lines in any commercials, it was just, you know.
So going back real quick.
Okay.
So you said that you felt a little sinful going into Talent One and stuff like that, modeling and all that stuff. But
by Talent One, I didn't feel sinful anymore. But in Nashville, I didn't tell anyone,
right?
Because I was afraid that I was somehow doing something wrong. I know it's embarrassing to say.
It's okay. I mean, it seems to me that you had two different lives. Like you had your traditional life, and then you had this artistic life. And it seems like there was always a tennis match between both.
That's good. And, you know, I think my own personal journey is learning that it didn't have to be that. It can be yes and.
Right.
Not
and it seemed
or.
like sometimes it was an or.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it was one of those things. I think, honestly, it was God himself teaching me, Carrie, that this is okay. But preconceived ideas. And, you know, maybe someday I'll write a book about, you know, pastor's kid angst. But when you grow up in an environment where everybody knows who you are, but you don't necessarily know who they are, and they walk up to you, like I have memories of people coming up to me going, why are you wearing that dress? Does your father know you're wearing that dress? I'm going to tell him you're wearing that dress because my knees were showing, or God forbid, my shoulders were showing. You know, it kind of does a little something to your psyche.
I bet.
And
especially at a young age.
Yeah. And so, you know, they kind of joke like pastors' kids are either really wild and rebellious or me, like I was little Miss People Pleaser achiever. And so I was trying to do the right thing. And so I'm like, oh, that's wrong. You know, so I took a lot on myself that I didn't need to.
Right. So there was a lot of hurt that you put on yourself.
And again, coming out of that background, a lot of people felt like, okay, if you're a singer, then you only sing in church. And if you're not singing, if you're singing outside of the church, then it's wrong. And that God just somehow disapproves of that. And it's not true. That is not true. But it took me a while to realize that.
Like, so how long did it take you?
Oh,
would you say?
I'm still
learning the process.
It's so funny. You know, you get to different levels, but giving myself that permission, and even just kind of, you know, like honestly, even my first, I did a catalog, and it was for a Christian, organization, believe it or not, and I was a model for them, and my dad wouldn't open it. He wouldn't look at it.
What?
Yeah. So, and I love my daddy. Don't get me wrong. I love my dad, and he's taught me so much, even about my work ethic, and now he totally is behind me. He's gone to some of my runway shows, like when I was in Nashville, and he comes to my gigs, and he loves what I'm doing, and he always wants to know what's next and this and that. But back then, my very first catalog, he refused to look at it.
I get that.
So,
Just like my parents.
so that does something to your psyche, and to realize, that's my dad's hang up. That's not God speaking, that was my dad's hang up.
You know what I found is that, like, because I changed my life, as I've said before in my podcast, that from a negative to a positive, and it was a complete 180. So when you do that later in life, you start to realize that, hey, I have really bad habits. And then I started thinking, where did I get those habits from? Oh, my parents. So there's all these habits that I had to train myself not to do anymore.
Yeah.
Because they were bad and they weren't working for me, especially as an artist.
Yeah.
They weren't working for me.
And I think, because I am a parent, you just start to realize, gosh, we all have our baggage, every one of us.
Yeah.
And we all struggle, and we all try to do our best. And part of maturing is realizing, okay, own my own stuff, and starting to make decisions, for yourself, what's best for you. But that's a huge learning curve.
Were you always afraid of that when you had kids? Like passing on your fears to them?
Oh yeah. Still. Yes.
What did you do to make sure you don't do that? Were you always working on your own fears? That's what I'm saying. Because, like, for me, it's like I want to conquer as much fears as I can, get them all out. That way, if I do it when I do have kids, I won't have to. I won't pass it on.
And I think part of it is recognizing no matter what you do, you're gonna pass something on. Like you're gonna send your kids to therapy for something.
Yeah.
And just be okay with the mess.
Right.
And ironically, and this is where I'm like, I gotta write a book someday. I don't know, or just a bunch of songs. It'll be like this, album stuff.
Storytelling song. Album.
But allowing myself to be messy in my own life and be like, okay, that's what I do as a parent. Just try to be real.
Raw.
Be real and be like, oh, I thought I was doing right here. I think I screwed up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And as long as you vocalize that too,
yeah,
right?
And without putting, and depending, on the age of your children too, but you don't want to put too much on them emotionally, but also just being willing to be a work in progress and to be okay with that. And I think, they always talk about you learn more's caught than taught, so by living your life as an example. And I think the day in, day out, they catch more than sitting down and just
That's why I always find it good to just work on yourself.
Yeah.
If you work on yourself, the more you work on yourself, the more people will see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, what I'm learning now, be kind to yourself. Again, being allowed, because I think, part of my journey was always, okay, as a people pleaser, but as an achiever, be the best you can be. But going, okay, learning to be kind to myself and be all right with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Being okay.
So I do that for everybody else. Why don't I do that for myself? I'm reading Brene Brown right now. She's awesome. And in fact, I have it in my book bag right here. It's called The Gifts of Imperfection. Oh, it's such a good book. You should read it. It's awesome.
Cool. I'm not a reader, but
get the audiobook. She does Facebook Live posts too.
What?
Oh, I know. But she talks about owning your story and owning your. She's literally a shame researcher, and saying that you can't find joy until you're willing to look at where your shame comes from.
Yeah.
And I think that's so profound.
I almost like people seeing my shame, seeing my weaknesses and all that stuff.
Well, I think, and that's what she would say, is that's what, owning it. And then it takes its power away.
Yeah.
And so for me, again, little Miss Goody Two-Shoes pastor's kid going, and then I'm a musician on top of it. And for some reason in churches, like if you're on a platform, all of a sudden it just, the pedals will goes, woo, or at least it felt like that to me. Like all of a sudden I'm like, people see you, they just kind of have this certain expectation of who you are as a person. And so it got a little scary to feel like you had to live up to something. And again, but I think people connect, and what I love about songwriting, you connect to vulnerability, you connect to shared humanity.
Same with acting.
Yes.
I mean, I tell my students that, the more vulnerable you are on stage,
Yeah.
the more it's going to come out. And sometimes I do it myself. I read the script for the first time, but I'm going to go out there and give it 110%, no matter if it's completely the opposite way it should be. As long as I do that, I'm okay, because I know that I'm learning and I know I'm going to grow from this. And it's a start. It's the foundation of a scene. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
If you don't start anywhere, you're not going to get anywhere. So that
Yes.
kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, life's a journey. We'll be learning
Yeah.
until the day we die,
That's
hopefully.
right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think people forget that too.
Yeah.
Is that it's like once they have kids or something like that, as an example, they just kind of stop growing themselves.
Yeah.
And
just take baby steps too. It doesn't have to be like, okay, I'm going to take this huge course. And it might be like that first album I did. I worked on it once every 2 weeks when I could, because that's when the engineer I was working with, who I could, who was willing to do it for me for free, because he wanted to grow his skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when he could do it. And so it was just little chunk by little chunk.
You just got to do what you can with what you have.
Yeah. And then it feeds you creatively. And you start to see those steps of growth. And even if you don't see it initially, after a little while, you look back and you're like, whoa, I've made progress.
Oh, yeah. That's a big step right there. Nobody realizes that.
Yeah. And it's encouraging, and it gives you the excitement and the juice to keep going.
Okay.
When you start to see
yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah.
So-
It seems like you have a lot of self-awareness.
Does it? Oh, good.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, because you're aware of your body, and the decisions you make and stuff like that are based on self-awareness.
Yeah,
And I think that you have a really good.
Thank
good
you.
self-awareness
Yeah, I guess I
from
do.
that.
Maybe I do.
It's like I always say. It's like you have self-awareness is the foundation to living a successful life.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you could be self-aware enough, the better you'll be off, because you'll make those decisions
Mm-hmm.
based on your awareness.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Do you have what do you have going on right now?
Well, I got a lot. This is like the calm before the storm. I'm doing a lot of prep work, but I'm excited because I'm about to sign with Center Sound Records.
Get out of here.
So here, crazy.
Applause.
And the funny thing is, I'm allowed to say how old I am. I'm 46, and
Own it.
own the age, and I'm not over the hill, Nashville.
There you go.
And one of the things about jazz too, it's like you can be gigging till you're 90, and it's like cool.
Right.
So I'm gonna be one of those little gnarly old ladies going, woo, like
I
out there.
remember the old days when I played.
So I'm gonna start a new album, getting prep work
Nice.
on that.
Very cool. You're in the beginning stages of that?
Yeah,
Cool.
pre-production, and lining up gigs, and and I really was shifting artistically from doing a lot of the corporate stuff to saying, again, bread and butter, like how I make my money right now is with teaching, and then I gigs and things supplement. But in 5 years, hopefully I'd like to balance out where I'm gigging more. But you have to grow that again, long term.
Mm-hmm.
And so and the music industry is really changing. Video is so crucial now. So every song that I'm going to be putting together, we're going to have a corresponding music video for it. So getting all that ready.
Very cool.
And then I'm lining up gigs that are actual concerts and not just
Not just bars and stuff like that.
Right.
Gotcha.
So I've got about 3 or 4 of those lined up for until December, and so I'm excited. So I'm going to be singing at Theater Raleigh on October 7th.
Very nice.
Excited about that.
Okay.
And then we'll put together another show here at Moonlight. Still trying to work out the kinks if it's going to be a songwriter show or a musical cabaret.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to be going back to Boston, doing a show there at an art center.
Very cool.
And then I'm going back to Charlotte and singing at Tosco Music Party. They do a big holiday performance. So that's at
Nice.
a theater in Charlotte. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Got some things lined up. So
I do.
This new album that's coming out, what's it about? Like, do you have a theme for it or anything?
I don't
like that?
have, that's still kind of bubbling. And because I'm not sure yet if it's going to be a full-length album or if I'm just going to release single at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we're going to hopefully record about 5 to 6 songs.
Yeah.
And the recording date's not till November.
Yeah.
So, and again, as a songwriter, you pull from all sorts of different things. So Some are like storytelling songs. Some pull from my own life. Some pull from observations of other things I've seen.
Right.
And so I'm not sure yet what my theme is.
That's good.
Ask me that next year.
All right.
Or again, if I'm just going to be releasing singles to help grow momentum,
Right.
and then put together another album like a year from now, that's like a real full album.
Cool. Very cool. So how can people reach you?
They can find me at carriemarshall.net, CarrieMarshall. That's my website.
Cool.
Or Facebook, of course.
Mm-hmm. Carrie Marshall.
Carrie Marshall. I think it's Carrie Marshall Music
Carrie
under
Marshall
there.
Music. Okay.
And I'm trying to get better because Oliver's been getting on me to get better at my social media stuff. I know. It's because I'm middle-aged, you know.
It's okay. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
So, and I have an Instagram thing, but my Instagram account, I just started because I'm like, I wanted filters to make my pictures look better than I really take in real life. So that's why I joined Instagram. I'm like, make me look like a better photographer than I really am. and then it started becoming like a place where, it's like a cool, social media hangout thing.
It's an actual app.
So I'm still a little afraid of like Instagram Live or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But I'll do it one day.
One day she'll do it, guys. I'll make her do it.
Yeah. So.
All right, cool. Thank you so much for being on. Is there anything that you want to add to this? Like as far as promoting anything or anything like that?
I don't know.
Well, you said your things and
you can find my music on iTunes. My jazz album Home is on iTunes. Mm-hmm. Redemption, which is the more Christian based one, is on CD Baby. Mm-hmm. And I don't have digital downloads for that. I just have hard copy.
Gotcha.
And then
they could look up Carrie Marshall on iTunes and check you out.
Yep. And then the soundtrack that I wrote for a movie, we didn't talk about that at all, but Changeover, which...
That's right. Let's talk about that. So this movie called Changeover that Essa Starber made, directed and acted in it. You scored the music. I
scored the music for that. And then I acted in it too. So...
and she won an award for that.
I won Best Supporting Actress. And again, just that nice little... And I think this is another theme coming through. I'm not always super confident in my abilities, but I just do it anyway. And then I look back later and I'm like, oh, maybe I'm good at this.
Yeah.
Because I honestly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's also my artistic growth going, right. I'm a good actor. And I have an award to prove it now.
That's right. I was talking about this yesterday on my podcast is that, I like to try new things, because, you never know if it's going to be good for you or not good for you. So, but trying new things. And I think that's what you're great at is trying new things.
Thank you.
Especially when you come to a point where, well, this isn't working. What else can I do?
Yeah.
That's where your mind goes. And
and you kind of readjust and recalibrate and go, okay, let's go this way. Yeah. So I wrote the music for Changeover and that was a blast too. I love scoring music. No, it was easy, to be quite honest with you.
And it was the first movie that you scored, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I'm very visual when I write. And so what was easy about it is somebody else was coming up with what to say.
Right.
So it was really, Estes just gave me the parameters of for the actual score. He's like, I need because the movie itself had a lot of intensity to it. He's like, I don't want the music to be depressing. The music has to move the scenes and be a balance for some of the heavy material because it's about a girl who struggles with PTSD. She loses her parents and so there's some heavy material, but it's also a positive movie. So how do we show that musically? And so just getting those parameters, I'm like, okay. And I look at songwriting like painting. I'm like, how do I paint that? So honestly, it was kind of easy. It was just fun because, again, I didn't have to come up with. Sometimes you can overthink things, and that's what I'm doing a little bit with my own album now. I just say something profound. What am I going to say? And then you're like, la 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 la. You can't. It's just just write something.
Right. You just start.
Yeah, just start. And so when someone else says, hey, write this, this is what I need, I'm like, okay, you took all the overthinking out of it for me, and now I just got to plug in what I know works.
Yeah. And especially because he gave you a lot of details, right, about the film. So that was taking all of that in.
Yeah,
and then made it easy.
And then visually I saw it. So I'm like, okay. And so I would watch and be like, okay, this is where you could use some music. And how do I match that? And I first started it with piano music, and that's what he thought he wanted. But as we started going, it sounded too Hallmark, schmaltzy. It was like, eh. And so, so then we tried to get a guitarist because I actually learned guitar for an audition, for an acting audition, and I learned it in what's called dadgad tuning, and that's still the only way I know how to play guitar. And I learned that because you can look like you know what you're doing when you really don't, and you can play some. Yeah. So one of my guitar player friends showed me that, and
Nice.
you know, so I can like jam and you know audition and be like, yeah, I'm a guitar player, and then you hear me, and you're like, whoa, who's that? But long
What are you
story
doing
short,
here?
I was trying to find another guitar player to play the things that I needed, and Estes kept going, they were too good. And really they were getting all these nuances. He just wanted really simple. And so I'm like, well, I can play simple. And so when I started playing, he's like, yeah, that's kind of what I want. So I ended up scoring the whole thing from guitar first. And
Nice. How long did it take you?
Well, I would work on it here and there. Again, the mom thing, balancing.
Right.
But honestly, I didn't have to go back to the drawing board too much. I put some stuff in, and you know how Estes is. He always has like 100 projects going on at once.
Right.
And so I gave him some music, and I'm like, okay, now just get back to me, because I was kind of nervous. I'm like, first score, I'm like, I don't want to screw this up, and I was having bad dreams about it and everything, because he wasn't getting back to me on whether or not he liked it. I don't even think he had listened to it yet. I'm not sure, but it was getting like closer and closer to him finishing. I'm like, he hates this. I'm like, I need time to like come up with something new.
Right.
But then when he actually listened to it, he liked it. And it was just more a matter of shifting like a couple things around. But we used guitar as the bass, and then I just played piano over that. And then we brought in cello and a little bit of percussion, and voila, that was the score. So it was very, again, it was very simplistic, organic sound. So it kind of has a singer-songwriter feel to the score, I would say.
Yeah, it does a little bit.
So, so I was able to do that. And
that's very cool.
It was fun.
And now you got an award for it.
Yeah.
And you got an award for acting as well, right?
I didn't. I got nominated for the score, but I won for acting, and that honestly surprised me, because I still, in my mind, think of myself musician first, actor second. And so, literally at the award ceremony, they passed the score and they read my name out, and I didn't win. So I was like, oh, well, that's all right. Again, the validation thing, it's like, believe in yourself, and it doesn't matter what other people say, just keep at it.
But deep down it's like, I wish.
I'm like, would have been awesome to win, but okay, I didn't. And then they got to Best Supporting Actress, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm nominated for this. I kind of, it wasn't really like in my psyche.
Yeah.
And as they were reading the names, in my mind, I'm like, Murphy's Law, Carrie, you're going to win because you have nothing to say. Like, you didn't prep at all for like a speech, like an acceptance speech. And literally as I'm thinking that thought, they're like, Carrie Marshall. And so I was like, I knew it. So I'm walking up to the podium going, what am I going to say?
A lot of ums.
Yeah, I don't remember what I said. I hope it made sense. And then I walked off stage the wrong way, and they had to come find me and be like, come off this way, So yeah,
so you had to walk
that was me.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's funny though.
But again, it was a confidence booster in going, hey, maybe people have told me I'm a good actor.
Right. Yeah.
And I think I'm starting to believe it now.
I think your acting is catching up to your music.
Yeah, and again, it's a journey. So grow where you can, learn where you can, and that's what I do. I guess that's just a way of life. Like, I took a Shakespeare class this year, and with my kids.
First time, right?
Yeah,
yes.
I loved it. It was awesome. Ray Dooley, he's amazing. But now I'm thinking as a mom and balancing. I'm like, okay, my boys graduate in 2 years, and then I'm like, empty nest. How weird is that? So in 2 years. I'm going to be much more free to be able to take more acting jobs and things like that. So what am I doing now to prep myself for 2 years from now?
That's true.
I'm doing.
I feel like I was talking about this the other day. I feel like I'm always getting ready for the next thing. I'm never like settled down and like, okay, now I'm done.
Yeah.
No, it's always what's going to be next.
Yeah.
I think the people who do that are always going to be ready for problems that occur or shifts that happen, and they're comfortable shifting because they're already getting ready for it.
Yeah. And then you'll find
with whatever it is,
you'll find as you look back, stuff that used to scare you, you go in and do, and it's like, psh, piece of cake.
Yeah.
And you realize, oh wow, again, like you look back, you're like, growth. I grew. I had no idea. Like to me, like putting together a podcast like this would be terrifying, and you're just like whipping it out, you know.
That's what she said. But, hey, whatever. It is what it is. I am Latin, so.
Okay.
Well, on that note, we'll end it. So you
Yeah.
won't have to say anything else that embarrasses you. It's fine for me, though. It's okay.
Church girl, you know.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
And until next I'm going to put the link to Changeover at the bottom for you two. As far as podcasts, I think it's changeover.com.
I don't even know.
God, I don't even know. You know what? I'll put
Google it. We're on Flix Premiere right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Flix Premiere.
Flix Premiere, Flix Premiere. You can watch it there.
Yeah. If you just search Changeover movie, you should be able to find it. So, all right. Thank you guys so much. And until next time. There we go.
Oh my gosh, with nothing. Like I'm so like cut that part. I get like I'm turned immediately red.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think of it in those terms.
That's funny.
Please cut that part out.
I can't, Carrie.